All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's ADINJC webinar with our team here this evening, Lynn Barry and Andrew Love and myself, Ed Marshall. We're talking about EQ and IQ tonight, EQ and EI, emotional intelligence. So just to introduce people, we've got Lynn, our chairman of ADINJC. Welcome this evening, Lynn.
Hello, thanks for joining us, everybody. And just want to say thanks to Andrew for joining us tonight, and also to Ed for all the work that he does with this. I'm just glad he hasn't done it on a Wednesday because I'll be missing the baseball.
Thank you, thank you there, Lynn. And welcome, Andrew Love, first time on a webinar with us, a new member to the ADINJC General Committee as well, the GC. And Andrew specialises a little bit in the EQEI delivery of lessons. So if you'd just like to give us a little bit of an introduction, Andrew.
Hello everybody, thanks for inviting me. I've been an ADI for about 12 years. I've been an ADI trainer for about eight years. More recently I've been working in the fleet arena and also delivering speed awareness courses. And I've spent a lot of time working with people to understand why they make decisions and what thoughts and feelings will affect their decisions and how you can manage them.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. Brilliant. Nice introduction there. And just as an introduction for those people, if we've got any new members that have joined us this evening, I just want to go through a little bit about how the webinar runs. As you'll see on your screen now, I'm screen sharing my screen, and we've just got a simple PowerPoint that we're going to go through, which will give us headings and kickers into the three of us. We'll have a conversation about EQ and EI and what it is and what it's all about, how it fits into driver training. If this sparks any interest in questions and you want to ask any questions, the control panel on your right hand side, there is a questions box there. And if you'd like to just type in your questions and fire away, and we'll present the questions to the team and see if we can answer those. Any questions that we're unable to answer or we can't get through them all, we'll attempt to answer any in emails afterwards as well. So sometimes we can't actually get through all of them in the evening because we get so many. But we'll try to get through as many as we can. Okay, so to start off, we'll change the screen and we'll hand over to Lynn.
Thanks, Ed. Just to say, really, before we start looking at EQ, we probably need just to look at IQ, because traditionally our intelligence was always measured as IQ, which is our general intelligence, and it actually stands for intelligent quotient. Now, if you want to go on and try out your IQ, there's lots of places you can go on the internet to try out lots of tests to find out what your IQ is. The average IQ is measured at around 100, and if you're getting to about 135, then you could probably be thought of as considered intelligent enough to go in Mensa. But looking now at EQ, let's just say that you probably all know examples of people who are extremely intelligent, got very high IQ, so you would expect them to have done exceptionally well, very good jobs, happy in what they do. In actual fact, that just isn't the case, because just having a high EQ doesn't necessarily seem to mean that you get 100% of everything you want. There's thought to be EQ, or emotional intelligence, which in some cases could be as equal to IQ, if not even more important. And probably what it's going to have is a good balance of both, to be honest. It gained prominence back in 1955 in a book by the author, also psychologist and a science journalist, Daniel Goleman. And I just need to, I don't know if you can see there what's on the screen, because when I copied that it's a little bit fuzzy, but what it says is if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you're not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, you're not going to get very far. And those are the words of Daniel Goleman. And that's really where EQ first gained prominence. You want to turn the slide on for me, Ed?
Sorry, yeah, I was just emailing a response then. Right, yep.
That's fine. So that's Daniel Goleman. Now, he wrote lots of books on the subject if you want to read the books. But the terms emotional quotient and emotional intelligence didn't really start to become popular until the 1980s, when the psychologists Halavey and Yale and John Mayer of the University of New Hampshire began conducting research into it, and then it became much more well known. And it's interesting, I just put that little picture there on the slides because it shows that EQ is sort of the depth to everything, and it's a bit of the unknown because it's what we can't see in people. But if you look at the size of that in that picture, I think that speaks volumes about EQ actually. Do you want to turn the slide on, Ed? If you can?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There we go. It'll show on your screen. There is a slight delay, folks, when I actually turn the screen.
Yeah, there's always a slight delay. So studies have now been done on the possible ways that a high or a low EQ might actually affect somebody's abilities, and that's the abilities to perhaps perform under pressure, help themselves resolve conflicts with things and cope with challenges. For example, somebody who's maybe got a lower EQ may well lack self-confidence, they may be a lot more pessimistic, and both of those things can have a huge effect on their performance and when they're doing tasks. I quite like that little bit at the bottom which says IQ plus EQ equals SQ, your success quotient. So again, you can turn it on there because really what we're doing is just introducing emotional intelligence before we start talking about it in our own subject area. There are people who actually don't believe in EQ at all. They just believe that things such as confidence, self-esteem, attitude are just actually part of somebody's personality, and you can't measure it and you can't modify it. Personally, I believe you can modify EQ because I think you can get it better. So if you find somebody or you feel yourself you're not very good with EQ, you're not very empathetic, then actually you can get better at that. You can train yourself to do that. Other studies have linked this measurement to communication skills. And if you could just go back one slide there, Ed.
Sorry.
See that little head there? Look at all those words: motivation, self-esteem, commitment, interpersonal awareness, decision-making, empathy. Think about thriving now and think about your pupils. And actually all of those things come in to our lessons and our contact with everybody that we meet as ADIs. So I think does that bring us on to the next slide now, Ed?
Yeah. The four stages.
Now let's start looking at it. Yeah, so we've got the 4 stages: understanding emotions, managing those emotions, reading people, and using emotions. So there's a little diagram just for everybody to look at. And there's the 4 areas, if you like: the awareness of others, social skills, self-management, and self-awareness. So if you want to talk about those a little bit, Ed, I don't know if it's yourself or Andrew.
Yeah, it is. I come in with the first 2, and then I'll bring Andrew in for the second 2. Self-awareness, one of the key areas for people, whether you're an ADI and you're doing some CPD, or whether you're with your learners and you're working with them, it's when you look working on EQ or EI, emotional intelligence, it's raising people's self-awareness, and also not only that you've got to be self-aware of what you're doing if you're looking at your own CPD, but it's being able to read other people's body language as well, not only your own. And it's also where you would start to get intuitive feelings, you get the gut feelings, and that's something that I try and work on a lot with the learner drivers is to get them to recognise that they've got these emotions going on, and that can build intuitive driving. So people will then start to act intuitively, become aware of their own body feelings, that they should be doing something. And they've got to recognise that it's going to have an impact on the way that they behave as well. And one of the things on a Facebook forum was how to get people to work on the levels, higher levels, and work on their feelings and manage their feelings. So self-management and recognizing that you have these emotions going on, you've got to learn how to then control them. And that's where the driving instructor's job really comes in. And as a driver trainer, it's asking people to really recognize that they've got these emotions. If they're sat there at traffic lights and they're feeling some pressure going on from behind from the other drivers, it's recognizing where that pressure is affecting them and where it's sitting in their body, to be able to then start to manage that pressure and recognize that that pressure is going to affect the way that they behave with their leg muscles, because they'll feel the pressure, feel the urge to rush, and then they get this impulse that they want to be driving off rather quickly and setting off to get the flow of the traffic going. That then can lead to the stall. So it's not then about the skill of actually how to handle the clutch. It's more about learning how to handle the pressure of not moving the car away. And then that can lead into then reframing and some other things to help people manage that and adapt and change how they then manage their behaviour. So I think that just about sums that up. Have you anything you'd like to add to those, Andrew, or how does that sound?
Yes, not for the first two. I think you've covered that really well. If we go to the next bit, the social awareness, this is really important for the ADI, whether you're in the learner market or the fleet market, which is where I spend some of my time as well. Having the ability to recognize when somebody is feeling under pressure or is starting to show their emotions is very important, so that you can highlight to them, okay, so what you're feeling now, what's happening. So you have a as a driving instructor, you have a very important role to help them understand when they're starting to feel emotional, or when they're feeling cross or angry, or when they're feeling under pressure. And that's really important, particularly on one-to-one training, to help people recognize that, so they can have a strategy to deal with that. And in terms of relation management, with the relationship management, it's really important that it's not just with your students or your clients that you manage those relationships. So you're able to read people through body language. It's also important that you work with examiners, the parents, ADIs, just to help you manage your business. If you appear to be able to empathize with people, that will help grow your business. And I think it's really important, these last two are really important for you to recognize and start just watching what people are doing. Does that make sense, Ed?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Mm.
Right. Okay, so just move that on to there. So I think this one stays with you, Andrew.
Okay, so what I'd like you to think about now, when if your primary market is the learners, I'd like you to think about what the reason for the journey is when the pupil comes and sits with you. So and then think about what the reason for the journey is when your pupil sits the test, the driving test. Is there any difference in that? So Lynn, would you like, because you have learners, don't you? So when the learner comes and sits with you, what's the purpose of that journey? Why are they with you?
They're there to come for a lesson to improve what they're doing. So I would say they're more relaxed then, because they get in and they know me. by then, but obviously they've got emotions from things that might have been happening to them before they come out. But generally they're calmer because they know it's me, and they've come out for a lesson and they're looking forward to their lesson, hopefully.
Yeah, and if they make a mistake on that lesson, how important is it really?
I think it matters to them, but I think they accept. I try to make them understand that there's no such thing as a perfect driver, that mistakes will happen, but it's how you deal with them. And so, you know, if something happens with a gear, it's not, well, okay, something's happened with the gear. It's okay when you've got through your test, when you're on your own, you're going to have to deal with that yourself then anyway. So great, because you've dealt with it. So they feel okay with making those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. So when they go to the driving test, what's the purpose of that journey? What's the difference?
Well, there's a huge difference, isn't there? Because on that day, they're going to get in the car with somebody that they don't know, albeit that they might invite me in the back, but I can't do anything for them. So obviously then different emotions are coming into place, and in fact some of them might have been up the night before, some don't sleep very well, some haven't eaten before they come out. Very occasionally, in all the time I've done this, I've had 2 pupils who've said to me when we get there, I'm not nervous then, I don't get nerves. And actually I believe it, because they acted in such a way that they clearly weren't nervous, they were just looking forward to it. But that, to me, is not norm on the day of a driving test.
Yeah, if we think about the outcomes of the driving test and the difference between the outcomes of the driving test and the lesson, often it could mean that if they don't pass the driving test, they can't go to work, they can't go to see their friends and things like that. So the pressures on them to perform are a lot different to when they're having a lesson with you. How do you find?
Yeah, definitely. It's huge for them, isn't it? Although I try to work with them to keep the whole thing in perspective. But obviously, even with things like the waiting test times, it doesn't help them because they're so concerned about getting another test. It seems it's not just the I failed it, but it's, well, when can I ever do it again? So yes, it's huge on them, the pressure on that day. And really, I'm just aware that everybody's different. I try and help them all in a different way that's best for each pupil by watching them and just seeing what I think works best. I think by the time you get to test, you know your pupils quite well and you know what will help them on the day. I think when I first became an ADI, I had a rigid sort of, this is what we do the hour before, and everybody I did the same with. And I realised for some people that worked brilliantly, but it didn't work for everybody. So one lady, for example, I just took her for a cup of coffee before, and then we drove down there, and she did really well. But in my early days, I would never have done that. I would have thought that was just wrong, but actually it worked really well for her.
Yeah, so that's like producing strategies, isn't it? To help deal with those emotions and those thoughts and feelings. And what I'd like to do is spend more time talking about that after I've talked to Ed about the fleet work. And we were mentioning you doing some work with HGV drivers. So what was the purpose when they're doing an in-vehicle session with you? What's the purpose of the journey? Why are they with you? What will be the outcome, the learning outcome from working with them?
The learning outcome from working with us is looking at what you said just a few seconds ago, actually, and that's looking at developing strategies to be able to deal with the pressures that come up in everyday work situations when they're driving for work. One of the key areas that I often come across in, especially dealing with HGV drivers, is the time pressures that are on multi-drop van drivers or HGV drivers. And if they arrive at a client and they're there on time, but then there's nobody to unload the vehicle, or they're having to wait in a queue to get unloaded, and then those time pressures seem to start building through the day. And it's looking at how to help them understand how to cope with those pressures. So that's one of the key outcomes for the day is putting in place some strategies to help them cope with those pressures.
Yeah. So if you do work with them, when you're working with them, those pressures aren't there. Sorry, I've just dropped loads of stuff on the floor. Those pressures aren't there, are they? Those delivery pressures, when they're with you, aren't there. So the purpose
Sometimes
of your journey is to
well, there
help.
can be sometimes, because
Yeah.
sometimes we go out with the drivers and we're actually training while they're doing the drops, which is really good. And
Yeah.
I quite like that when
Yeah.
we go out and we're doing some driving, especially if that happens where we have had it where we've got to one drop and we had a half-hour wait and it should have just literally been straight in, straight out. We had one piece of metal on that was about 4 foot long and we could have carried it off between the two of us, but we had to wait in the area because they had specific coned off areas where the HGV had to drive into this area and then wait, and it got coned off all around it, and then other people came in. The driver then could undo the load, and then people could then come and take it off. So because of the rigidity of the safety features that were in place at that company, because obviously they must have had some sort of major incident gone off to start to have this where they cone every area off, it would have been quite interesting to have a talk with the company to see why they were taking that measure to that extreme. So the pressures on that driver were quite extraordinary that day, and what he did was he then phoned his boss up and said, can you then, phone ahead and let everybody else through the day know that we're off schedule now. So that sort of relieved his pressure, and he sort of then, before he phoned, I said, what station was it go like, how are you going to tell the boss this, what sort of time scale are we looking at?
Sorry. Ed, you're breaking up a little bit there. You're breaking up a bit, Ed.
Right. Sorry, go on, Andrew, I'll hand it back to you. So that's what we're doing.
I can't hear. Modern
Andy,
technology,
do you want to
mate.
move on to the next one, and I'll talk that one through with you while Ed sorts his headphone or whatever out.
So the point I was about to make with that was when you've got working in the fleet, they have no control over the distance they have to travel. They have to go. They've got those delivery points, or they've got those meeting points, or they've got to go and see those clients. So they haven't got any control over that bit. What control have they got during that time? That could be Ed or Lynn, if Ed can.
Sorry, can you dial that one, Lynn? I'm just going through some questions.
Yeah. So what control have they got?
Well, I mean, they've got control over things that they're doing in the cab and how they react to other people out there. As far as I don't do this sort of work really, but I would think they can control their emotions in the cab or otherwise, and be watching with other people what's happening.
That's right. So
control over that.
Yeah, if they can't do anything about the distance they've got to travel, they can't do anything about the hold-ups. They might be able to go on a diversion or something like that, but they can't do anything. That's beyond their control. What they have got control of is how they deal with that, and also how they deal with their emotions. So as a quick exercise for that, could everybody think about a time that they got really frustrated while they were driving or in a driving lesson, and just think about that and see if you can imagine it and feel it. Then what I want you to do is recognize what's happening to your body when you're thinking that. So for me, it was a time when somebody cut me up. They overtook, there was something coming the other way, and I could feel myself getting really tense. And I got really frustrated by it. And my body started to get tense. I started to sweat on my palms. So I started to recognize when I was becoming emotional, or when I was getting frustrated. Yeah. Now what I want you to do is think about a really happy time, something that really made you feel good. Yeah. Notice what it does to your body now. What's the difference in your body? So were you able to do that, Lynn? Think about something like that.
Yeah, I can think about lots of happy times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of, I mean, usually they're to do with your family or something, aren't they?
Yeah.
Times like being at graduation ceremonies, being at your wedding day, being at, you know, when your first grandchild's born, all these sorts of things made me extremely happy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's the difference between the two?
I think
how do you feel?
Well, I've just noticed that my own shoulders have dropped down while I've been talking about it. I've started smiling more. You just feel more content and more comfortable because it's something happy rather than something which is making you wound up inside.
Yeah. When we think about this, where do we want to be? Do we want to be in the really happy state, or do we want to be in the really angry state?
I'd rather be in the really happy state, or even a happy medium in the middle. I recognise that being in the bad state is not good, and I will do something to try and bring myself out of it. I'm quite a positive person, so if something's negative happening to me, I'll do something about it and make strategies to make it better one way or another.
Will we always make brilliant decisions if we're really happy?
Oh, well, no, not necessarily. I think when we're at the highs or very lows, we probably don't make great decisions. I think we probably make our best decisions when we're just coming down from either of those a little bit.
Yeah, and that's really important for us to recognise that if we're really frustrated, sad, unhappy, cross, it's just as bad really as being really happy, because we will make that will influence the decision that we make.
Yeah, this is important to get through to your pupil as well, isn't it? To make them understand what you're doing now with me.
Yeah, and it's also important for fleet work as well, to get people to recognise that, because you make a decision. If you've got emotional state attached to that decision, often it's not the most efficient decision to make, or that it's not the best decision or the best time to make a decision.
Definitely.
So when we come to work with emotional intelligence, we have to get people to recognize the way that their body feels or the way they're feeling, so that they can then put strategies in place to deal with it, so they can make a more effective decision. So, and that's really important in our area, in a safety critical environment. Yeah. Anything to add to that, Ed?
Yeah, we've just got some
good
comments. Yeah, no, we've got some good comments that's come through here. On test day, nerves on test day can have an enormous impact on their drive. Helen finds
your Ed, excuse me, we've got problems with when you speak. It's breaking up a little bit. Try it again, because it started off okay and then it broke up.
Right. I think I'm having problems with bandwidth. I'm just going to get rid of my webcam. So sorry folks, you won't see me now. That's made it better for some people. Yeah.
Don't apologise for that, Ed.
I'll take my tie off now. Relax. Does that sound better now?
Still doesn't sound great. Still doesn't sound great. I don't know if there's anybody else using anything in your house. Do you want us to carry on a bit and then come back to you?
I will just disappear and say that nobody else is using anything. Yeah.
Okay.
Do I put the next slide up?
No, we're fine, thanks, Ed. How about Andrew, when we meet somebody on the first day?
Okay, when we meet, so when we meet somebody on the first day, how do you think they might be feeling at that time?
Well, I'm actually, sometimes I feel, even, you know, with the amount of years I've done this, when I go to meet somebody for the first time, you don't really know what you're going to get, do you? You don't know whether
Yeah,
this is going to be
yeah,
one of those pupils that you enjoy going to meet, or one where you feel a bit more, oh, it's this lesson again this week, and we've all had those. So the first day you meet, it's really quite important, isn't it? I
yeah,
think it's really, so it's important to put them at ease. So if you've got more EQ, you're more empathetic, you'll be able to, even if you don't know them, whoever they are, whatever age, you can put them more at ease, you can be calm, you can be reassuring, because it's the very start of the relationship, isn't it, really? If
yeah.
they, you know, if they can understand that they're going to get on with you, I think that's really important on that first session.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, it might be then you start to get them to think about strategies. So if they, excuse me, if they are feeling nervous or something of that nature, one of the things that I do is get them to do the five breath technique. So breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it, and then breathe out for 5 seconds.
Right.
And
Okay.
do that 5 times. What
Does that
does
work?
it do for the body, do you think, by doing that?
Slows it down in some ways. Does it slow the
Yeah,
heart rate, or the, yeah?
yeah. Slows the heart rate down. So that will then help them, it'll take that edge off the pressure. So just by
Right.
simply having a simple strategy like that, it can help people. And it's a little technique that they can use without having to an intervention by anybody. So as soon as they recognize that they're feeling a bit tense, or their emotions are getting the better of them, then if they employ that simple breathing technique, then that can help. Have you got any other techniques that you might use for that, Lynn?
No, I mean, I suppose I quite like that, the sound of that one. It's not one that I actually particularly have used up to now with people, so that's one I might well employ, particularly on driving test day. I tend to get them to breathe slowly, so I think that's probably the same thing.
Yeah, I like my clients to breathe. Yeah, I always find that useful if they breathe.
Always a good one, always a good one.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the first day is a very important session, isn't it? So it sets the scene, really. How are we doing,
yeah.
Ed? You all right?
Yeah, we've got nothing going on in the house, no Wi-Fi, no nothing. So, can you hear me okay now?
So let's try some questions. Yeah, you sound better. Let's try some questions now.
Right. Okay. Yeah, nerves on test day. Helen was saying that she uses mock tests to try and simulate the pressures of being in test conditions, and tries to get them to relax quite a bit. I think she was also saying at some point that she uses breathing exercises as well. Get them to breathe, which is what you've just been saying, Andrew. Yeah, yeah. So Gavin was one. Should mistakes not be seen as a positive?
Yeah, I think it's just that word, isn't it? I mean, really, I hate mistakes and I hate faults, but I like talking about improvements and ways we can get things better. So, yeah, definitely. I think they have to recognise that they themselves call them mistakes sometimes, don't they? Or they'll make a comment as they do something, and they'll sort of say, well, that wasn't very good. So, yeah, I don't mind it being positive at all, because obviously from a mistake you can learn things, which is much better. I don't always think that the pupils see it as a positive thing, but the would make them more calm about it. Certainly will help them more. It's the whole thing with driving is that it is about making improvements to the drive all the time. Yeah, just prefer the positive words rather than the slightly more negative ones. Yeah, we can turn the mistakes into positives, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's really important that that we use what went well, what did so well, and what can you do differently. And I think the reason that we should always start with the positives is because how does that make people feel if they can come up with some positive positive things about what they've done? immediately it starts to relax them. If you start off with the negatives, they start building a barrier. It starts, so there you're building on those emotions, those negative emotions. But if you can get people to think about the positive stuff, there'll be positive emotions, then they'll be more open to change, and they'll probably have the answers themselves. It's probably a bit of a side topic there, but
well, I think that's about feedback as well, isn't it, Andrew? That's so, for example, something that sometimes I'll say to people if they've done a manoeuvre really well is something like, wow, I couldn't have done that any better myself, you know, well done. And then you look at their face and their eyes have lit up, they're smiling, they just sort of sit up in the chair because they like to be told when things have gone well like that. And that's their emotions, and it's their emotions. And after that, they drive, you know, well again because they've had that positive experience.
Yeah, and I think often if they can come up with that themselves, if they can, and I think that's really important because that goes back to the self-evaluation part of emotional intelligence. We've got to recognize when we've done well, and sometimes it's more important to recognize what you've done well than dwell on the things you haven't done so well. And what I found, particularly with learners when I was in the learn, and in fact when I'm delivering ADI training as well, people are so focused on what they've done well, they're so focused on what they've not done so well, and it could be a very small thing, they forget all of the other stuff. So if we can make them recognize that they've done well, make them feel good, it comes back to the thoughts and feelings again, doesn't it? Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, they need to let things go and forget things and move on from them, definitely, because that affects your emotions. Have we got any other questions, Ed?
No, we've just had some positive feedback about the people like the mistakes area. We've had a few comments actually saying exactly the same thing. Mistakes are learning opportunities. And it's taking that opportunity to learn from that. And I always say to my pupils when they've made the mistakes and they go, oh, it's been a crap lesson today, you know, haven't got on very well. Yeah. And then you go, actually, that's been the best lesson ever because you've learned loads. Yeah, you think of the value for money you've got today. Yeah. Whereas if I'd have taken you on a nice, easy route and you'd had a really enjoyable drive and you didn't make any mistakes at all, what value has that lesson? Yeah, because you're here to learn, aren't you? You're in a learning environment. Be prepared for making the odd mistake, and look at them as opportunities to learn. Take the positive out of that, and look at that as a building block. So, the other thing is that I find that emotions, and through the study that I've been doing, and this is something I know you've studied on as well, Andrew, is that when people have these high emotions, low emotions, those are where the memory works the best because people remember those areas, and that's what takes learning from the conscious side into the subconscious side, and that's where the long-term memory has an effect, and that's the lasting change that you're looking for. And when you can work on the emotions and you can get people to feel these situations and make them an extreme emotion of being elated that they've got it right, that's where the long-term memory sits. And that's when the true learning actually takes place.
It's rather like the day of their driving test, isn't it? Even if they don't pass it, if they do things that day, because they're in that sort of state, when the examiner goes over it, very often they won't make those mistakes again. They remember that particular day and what they did on that day. It's so different from an ordinary lesson.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Helen's just put on here. Helen's just put ADIs, the psychologist, the counsellor, aren't we, Brill? Yeah, and I think sometimes it does actually. Yeah. It is that case.
So let's start charging for those services.
Well, that's it, isn't it? Let's put a value on that. Yeah. So with no more questions at the moment, guys.
The slide on?
There we go.
Yeah, do you want to move the slide on? Yeah?
It is. You've just taken a time to come up, Lynn. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. So here, really, this is the GDE. We don't want to spend too much time on this, but if we look at what we've been speaking about for most of the time, this is level 3. What's the purpose of the journey? Yeah. Why are you taking that trip? What's the reason behind it? And most of the work that I'm involved in is why are you taking that journey? What are the influences on that journey? And that could be the journey of the driving lesson, the journey of the driving test. It could be the journey for the driver, the full license holder. Why are they taking that journey when they come to me? And why are they taking that journey when they're working? And this also is really important, because this journey doesn't just have to be about driving. This can be about your day as you go through work, the day as you go through school, and these skills that we help people enhance can be used for a lot of other things. How to deal with exams, how to deal with work pressures and things like that. And I think this is really important, that we don't underestimate the power of this matrix. This is not just about for driving, it's for life. God, that was quite something, wasn't it?
That was very sweeping there, Andrew. I think, I think that what we learn in our, in lessons, etc., definitely, and the driving test, it does help them with other things at school, because many of mine say that. They say they find their music exams easier when they've started driving lessons, because it's the same sort of pressure. So I think you're quite right with what you've just said, actually. I think also self-awareness comes on this, doesn't it, on the GTE matrix in the higher level. So being self-aware and to self-evaluate. And I think also, if we're talking about emotional intelligence as well, we need to recognize how to own those emotions. So if somebody cuts us up at a roundabout, and they've made me cross because they've cut me up, actually, by saying they've made me cross, they are now owning that emotion. You can't do anything about it because it was down to them, it was their fault. But if you say something like, I'm cross because they've cut me up on the roundabout, then you are the one in control of that emotion. And I think that's really important for us to recognize when we're delivering any form of training. If we can get people to recognize, actually, I'm the one that can make the difference, I'm the one that can take control, then we can really do something about it. It's exactly the same with things like tailgaters. If people feel uncomfortable and they say they're too close to me, okay, it's their fault. It's pushing that responsibility to somebody else. If you can say, well, what can I do to make a difference if I leave more space in front, then you are now taking control of that situation. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, definitely. You want to move on to that last slide for people just to be having a look at?
Yeah, it's just had a little bit of a story here. It's over to two sort of statements. Am I coming across okay? I'm not breaking up. Right.
Yes, no, you're fine now.
Right. I think my daughter was sneakily going on the Wi-Fi, until I went upstairs and gave her a telling off. Don't get on it. Yeah, it's been all right since I've been upstairs, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. No, honest, Dad, I'm on 3G. Right. So somebody's had a customer the colleagues at work used to call her "Sorry, Megan," because that's all she used to say. And this particular instructor said, "So let's not use the word sorry in my car. Let's use oops or okay instead." And the next one goes, "But nearly a year later, she's still with me, still not past a theory, but she almost never says sorry in the car now, and has been promoted at work." So take a bow.
That's
well, there you are.
Yeah.
That
So
just, if I can just jump in, Ed, there, that reminds me of something that I used to do. I've done a lot of training with John Farlam, and one of the very first days, one of the very first sessions, he talked about positive words and the importance of using positive words. So one of the things that I did was in my learner lessons was I got a pot of positive words, awesome, successful, things like that. And what I used to do was get people, right, let's choose a word for today. Okay, this is just a bit of NLP. Let's choose the word for the today. And the very first time I used that was a lady who was very nervous about driving. She was a good driver, but she was just very nervous about doing it. And I just put this word up, successful, on the dashboard with some Velcro. And she said, what's that? And I said, well, what do you want to be today? And she said, successful. So we played a game around getting the word successful into as many sentences as what we could. And the word was still in the, on the dashboard during the driving test. She went away and she passed the driving test. Guess what the very first word was she said to me when she got out the car? Successful.
Successful.
And then I started to say, well, that's what did that say? At this point, the examiner started to listen to what was going on. If we can generate positive emotions, positive feelings, and help people recognize that by playing games or just doing simple things like that, like that last comment about they don't use the word sorry now.
Yeah.
If we can reframe how we deliver training, it can have a massive effect, but not only just for the person, but also the road safety.
Yeah, a lot of pupils will say sorry when they've made a mistake or they've done something that they don't like, won't they? But you know, they don't need to, do they? Because there's nothing to be sorry for. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to put the top 10 habits up, Ed,
Yeah,
just
there
so
we
people
are.
can
Yep.
have a look?
There. So I'll just this particular person's just like that one, Andrew, and she's going to try it on hers on her lessons. Yeah.
There was, just to follow that story up, there was about 3 years after I started this, one of the ladies said, you haven't got the word awesome. So I deliberately didn't use the word awesome or put it in. I saved it for a driving test, and I got this massive A4 page with awesome and put it on the front of on the dashboard for a driving test.
Brilliant. And was the result awesome?
Brilliant.
I would need to issue a health and safety warning here. Please don't make it a poster, on a flip chart size, because they won't see out the window. I just thought I needed to explain that.
Yeah.
Great.
Somebody says this is all well and good. But it's hard for the ADI to stay positive sometimes, and this is important, isn't it? That we can be as good as we want seeing the emotions in the pupils, but we have to recognise the emotions in ourselves as a trainer as well, because that could start to affect us and our training as to how we come across. So. The one thing that I don't think we've actually mentioned this evening is the importance that a lot of what we've been talking about here, it goes a long way to building really good rapport with your pupils as well. If you're very good with the EQ and emotional intelligence, you tend to find that you build better rapport with your pupils and get a good, strong relationship where there's a lot more trust built between the two of you. And that helps the training environment as well.
Yeah, that goes back to the management of relationships, doesn't it? That was on the slide a couple of slides ago.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, actually, Andrew. That one of the quadrants. No, that's fine. One of the quadrants at the beginning on that diagram was self-management, wasn't it? Yeah. So the person who's saying this is fine, but ADIs can have bad feelings, and we can't always be positive. that's self-management with good EQ, and you can train yourself to do this. You can pull yourself out of those sorts of feelings and use the sorts of things you've been talking about on ourselves, actually, because we need to stay positive as well. When you get into the negative, everybody's failing, nothing's going right, everybody else on the roads, you know, cutting me up today, you can get very down as an ADI. So I think you've got to help yourself stay positive, and people that can do that with good EQ skills will, you know, always come out, well, on top, really.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you can improve your EQ skills. It's good to say that. And also, if anybody listening wants to go on and find out about their EQ skills, you can go on the internet and just put testing my EQ, and you'll find there's 6 or 7 different tests. I did one this afternoon just to see the sorts of questions, and you know, they're quite fun to do. I don't know how exact they are, but they're quite fun to do. But you can improve your own EQ if you feel you need to. It's not something you just naturally necessarily have to do.
I think the most important thing with improving your IQ is learning to recognize your emotions, how you're feeling, what your body's saying. So one of the first signs of getting frustrated or cross is just maybe a little bit of tenseness in the shoulders, or maybe you just start, you know, just doing something like that. Recognize that, and then have a strategy to put in place and practice on yourself. Once you start learning that and recognizing that in yourself, you can make a positive difference to something else. And just while we're saying that, one of the things that I find quite amusing is I'm 51. I'm a 51-year-old bloke, and I spend a lot of time speaking to middle-aged people, usually blokes, about emotions. That is some challenge. You've just got to get people driving on the road and passing a driving test.
Yeah.
I talk to 51-year-olds about emotions.
Great. This is good stuff.
Yeah.
Have we got any other questions, Ed?
No other questions.
Just to finish off.
No, at the moment, no, nothing else. If anybody's got any questions and they want to ask, fire away, because this is the last few slides here. So with the webinars, we're actually, with our conference being at the end of next month, we're missing the October webinar because we're all going to be quite busy at the end of the month trying to get the conference up and running, and we're going to give that one a miss, and we're going to restart again on the 29th of November, and then we'll be missing the December one as well, because the December one falls right in the middle of the Christmas holidays, so we missed that one last year as well. We'll give you all a break over Christmas. So topic to be confirmed for the next one as yet. We're hopefully trying to reorganize and regroup after reorganizing this one, and we'll regain again on the 29th of November. Hopefully you've all got your tickets for the conference. Selling fast. They're all going really well, aren't they? Looking forward to the conference at the end of this month. That's at Birmingham. £68 a ticket, I believe. Lynn, is that correct?
If you read II magazine and you quote Intelligent Instructor, it's 55 just for this next couple of weeks. There's a special offer in there.
Right. Okay. So, special offer then. Okay. Right. We've got some questions just flown in. Have we got time? 3 questions. Last 3. Right. Do autistic people have a low EQ?
Yeah, on the there was the mention of special needs on one of those slides, which we didn't really talk about. I'm not a total expert in special needs or additional needs that people have, but I do think that depending where people lie on the spectrum, for example, I've got a girl with Asperger's at the moment and quite heavily at the top of the spectrum, and she finds it almost impossible to understand how other people are feeling. You know, pedestrians, other motorists, she finds dealing with her own emotions quite difficult as well. So I think, yes, they do struggle for sure. But I think there are strategies, again, that perhaps you can help them put in place, or maybe are already being put in place for them at school, because they're more likely to be having special help at school, and that sort of thing. Strategies will be put in place. But I think, yes, I think that they're not likely to have such high EQ.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that if you've got somebody with additional needs, that you ask them what they do. They're the experts in their condition.
Yes.
They often have a way of dealing with it, or they have somebody who can help them with that.
Yeah.
And of course, they often have extremely high IQ.
Yeah.
Right. One quick one here. Don't quite know how we're going to answer this one. I've been thinking about this since I flicked onto it. Right, a quickie. I have a lady who constantly fixes her hair. I've tried everything to try to get her to concentrate on the driving. I believe it's distracting her from concentration, but she may be doing it subconsciously. Has anybody come across this one? You have, Lynn? Well, go on.
How am I?
Yeah,
how am I
Andrew.
going to tell anybody about hair? Yeah, come on.
Well, we'll hand this one to Lynn.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've got plenty of people where I've even asked them to look in the mirror to see what's behind them, and instead of actually looking at the car behind, they're doing this, or they're fixing their fringe. It's a sort of confidence thing, isn't it, sometimes? And I think you're right, they may not realise that they're doing it. I'm not sure I'm not sure how to help that person answer that question. You need a strategy there to help them.
Yeah. One of the things, why not make it into a game? One of the issues is, well, first of all, is it a problem? Okay, let's not make it a problem if it's not a problem. But secondly, if it is a problem, try and make them aware of it. One of the strategies that I use is I'll play games, and we'll have rewards, and it'll be sometimes it'll be a chocolate bar, sometimes it'll be an orange. So, for example, if they were going to be messing with their hair or something like that, and they're not aware of it, let's just have a look. Every time that you flick your hair or something like that, you have to give me a chocolate bar. If you go for half an hour without doing it, I have to give you a chocolate bar. The rules of the game, so that's the game. But also with the rules there, if they give me a chocolate bar, it has to be one of the big giant chocolate bars. If I have to give them a chocolate bar, it's one of the small celebration type chocolate bars. So just make sure you get the rules right. But it's anything like that to make it fun, make them aware, them aware of what's happening. Yeah.
Make them aware that while they're playing with the hair, obviously they haven't got the hands on the wheel, have they? So there could be a slight problem with it, and it could be a nervous thing. So I like your idea of a game there. Yeah, that would probably sort it out.
But if it's not a problem, it doesn't need sorting, because what you'll do is create a problem.
Create another problem.
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. Right. Okay. This one here, just a very quick one, and I think this one with the Asperger's, with a pupil struggling left and right, I would move away from left and right. I wouldn't actually go down the road of using the words left and right, and try and stay away from that. Look at and talk to them about how they might come up with a strategy to be able to deal with negotiating which way you're going. If it becomes a real problem, and if you're asking them to go left and right, maybe the simple use of arrows might be a good one, just to have an arrow that points each way rather than using a word left and right. Another way that I've dealt with left and right.
I use the hand signal.
Yeah, the hand signal. The other one I do is write the letter L put it on there. Just write the letter L on the left hand, letter R on the right hand, so as they're holding the steering wheel, that L and R is straight in front of their eyes. So a couple of techniques there that help people.
Or lemon nail varnish or red nail varnish.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. That must look nice on you, Andrew.
Yeah, it did. My daughter was really embarrassed.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, right, so that's it, everybody. We've gone through all the questions there. There's just one or two others, but there. Thanks for what we've done tonight. Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. Look forward to meeting you all at the conference. If you're there, give us a look out at the conference. It'd be nice to see. We see all these names on the webinars, but it'd be nice to put a face to the name. It's all right for you guys. You see our ugly butts every time we're on here. Yeah, but introduce yourself if you see us at the conference.
Thank you, Ed.
Yeah. Don't need to introduce yourself, Andrew. I'll find you. Yeah, and yeah, we'll see you on the 29th of November. Thanks, everybody. If you could just sign out of the webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
We'd just like a quick chat at the end and just catch up with how we feel it's all gone. So there's a red cross or some sort of means on the control panel. If you could just cross out on the control panel, and that will exit you from the webinar. Good night, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.